promised to catch up with them later in the afternoon, after I had met Ernie, and have another drink with them. I felt at that point I needed to speak with Ernie first out of courtesy before gleaning more from the locals behind his back. And here I am, sat in the car outside Greenbank Farm and Greenbank Cottage, the bungalow next door. I hope he's willing to talk. If he is, it could simply be a case of a couple of interviews and the job's done. That's the notes written up, Mr. Diary. I shall update again after the visit, then nip back to the Miners' Arms. I'm guessing there will be a lot to report back on here, so I will update you again this evening. Mr. Diary, I found my man. 5:30 p.m. Back at the hotel. By the time I return to Lancashire, I will have quite a dossier on Mr. Ernie Grimshaw, and, despite the fact that I started off with only a copy of his birth certificate, of a man born 90 years ago, I've done pretty bloody well, even if I do say so myself. 2 trips to a pub and 1 to a bungalow half a mile down the road, and I have a sizable file to send to Mr. Green. I will catalogue it all and work out a price for work done. Considering it has only taken 2 days of my time and a bit of prep work, I can't charge too much, but I do have a lot of information to send, and that will be reflected in the price. I will update you now, Mr. Diary, and then enjoy a nice evening meal and a few drinks to celebrate. Now, where shall I begin? The knock on the door of the bungalow, I think. It was pouring down when I approached the house. A slight overhang offered some protection from the rain while I waited for an answer. A man of 90 does not move at pace, and I didn't expect him to open the door quickly. Sure enough, there was a shuffle to the door, then a shuffle back to the table to get the key, then a shuffle back to the door again, and a muffled apology, and then it opened. He was taller than I expected, nearly 6 feet. He invited me in out of the rain, without even asking who I was or why I was there. This was incredibly trusting, but that's country folk for you. I followed him into the living room and he offered me a seat. I wasn't used to such hospitality, twice in one day. You wouldn't get that from where I come from. I didn't really know how to approach it, so I just told him the truth, why I was there and who sent me. I expected him to be out on the back foot or curious as to who was asking about him, but if he was worried, he didn't show it. I'm an old man, he told me. I have nothing to hide. I explained that I knew nothing of Mr. Green other than his request for information. Mr. Grimshaw just chuckled and told me not to worry. It was maybe a long-lost relative wanting to give him money, and if it was a long-lost relative looking for money, he could bugger off, as he didn't have any. He said he didn't know anyone called Green anyway. I explained that, as the request was a little vague, he could just tell me whatever he wanted. A little of his life and where he grew up, perhaps a little about his family and where he went to school and worked and lived, etc. He seemed more than happy to share this information on the dictaphone too. He was quietly spoken and put me at ease straight away. I was meant to be doing that for him. He told me about his family, his wife, how he had lost his wife after a long battle with cancer, and how, while they had no children themselves, he was close to 2 nieces who now live abroad. No regrets, though. His nieces kept in touch over the phone, and they have their own lives to live now, which he shares, albeit from a distance. He said that he isn't afraid of being on his own. He likes his own company. He keeps pigeons out the back, and the neighbours visit often. As for work, he spent most of his adult life helping on what remained of the farm with David and Mabel. There was a few years later on working down the pit, but it was never something he enjoyed. Too tall for all that back-breaking work in small spaces, he said. He much preferred the fresh air. He went to school in a nearby town of Aspatria and met his soon-to-be wife there, Sarah. The two of them made their first home together in one of the terraces near the pub. It was basic and small, and they didn't have much to offer other than each other. The usual tale, nothing out the ordinary. A nice man with a normal background in a close-knit community. There's a bit more information gathered for Mr. Green. We talked some more over a coffee, and he told me to come back any time, and he would try and remember some more. He said he enjoyed sharing with me. I felt he enjoyed the company as much as anything, and he was a pleasure to listen to. By the time I left, I was keen to get back to the pub and speak with the locals again, for their stories and opinions. They were bound to have a few tales to put a bit of meat on the bones of this nice but fairly ordinary story, and they didn't let me down either. The general consensus was that Ernie was a nice man, a humble man, a friends with anyone type of guy. Those gathered around the bar were all considerably younger than Alf. I'd guess mid-50s, early 60s, but even they had some way to go to catch up to Ernie. Through the conversation, I later found out that Alf was 78. He must have only been a boy himself when Ernie was in his teens, so he was not in the same friendship group and did not really have much more to relate than the others, other than tales of hanging around with the older lads, which in this sparse area did not result in much more than hijinks and adolescent dares. Alf did not recall much at all from the early days, and did not get to know Ernie until much later. He remembered that Ernie was a fast runner, a great tree climber, and a decent student, good enough to go to university, but did not have the means to do so. He remembered Ernie being quite shy around girls, and then women, and he spoke a bit funny. The two could have been connected. A speech impediment or stutter can paralyze a young person looking to find their place in the hierarchy with their peers. The others told tales of growing up, but few of them involved Ernie. He was much older than them, and just another resident in the village. To sum up, he was a kind-hearted, athletic, studious, and kind boy. He was celebrated in the village for his skills as a gardener, crown green bowler, a cricket umpire, and crossword specialist. He was a friend to everyone without getting too close to them. In many ways, a social loner, but by no means a recluse. Just a lovely profile of a lovely man. I flirted with Sheila over a bag of nuts and a pint of lemonade, but I eased off when I found out that her husband was in Afghanistan on secondment. I played darts with the Mickelson brothers. I discussed the art of making scarecrows with Big Sam, and I played cards with Tom and Barbara. A jolly good afternoon on the job. I'll go back and see Ernie in the morning to see if he has anything more to add before returning to Lancashire. From there I will write up a profile for Mr. Green, all the information gathered, including photographs and copies of documents, if any, I can collect as evidence. I will also ensure I get a few photographs of Ernie himself, now and in years gone by, and generate an invoice for work done. I did not expect to get so much so quickly. If he's happy with my findings, I will conclude the case. I'll then go to work on the Mrs. F case over the weekend, and all being well, conclude that by Sunday evening too. The hunt for new work will commence then, but for now, Mr. Tyree, I'm going to head off downstairs and try the roast lamb and local ales. No rush in the morning. Mr. Grimshaw isn't going anywhere, and I can saunter back at my own pace. What a lovely way to end a very productive day.